A few weeks ago, I asked folks on the ElementaryOS subreddit if anybody would be interested in seeing a tutorial on how to create an elementary app using GTK and Vala. And based on the responses, I've decided to create a two-part tutorial video, starting with the absolute bare basics of Vala and GTK, and ending with some of the more advanced topics, so hopefully you can get started on your own. Now, there is a documented getting started tutorial on the ElementaryOS website, and that guide covers not only how to get started with the code, but also how to get started with source control and actually contributing to the project. In this tutorial, we're only going to focus on getting started with the code. And to get started with the code, we'll need the Elementary SDK. So go ahead and open up a terminal window and do sudo apt install elementary-SDK. The Elementary SDK package is a convenient meta package that kind of brings along all of the required dependencies, like Vala and GTK and everything else in between. Once the SDK is finished installing, you'll want to open up some kind of text editor or IDE. In this video, I'm just going to use the Scratch text editor because if you're using Elementary, that'll come pre-installed. Now what you'll do from here is create a file and immediately save it using the .vala file extension. So you would call it hello.vala, main.vala, or whatever. This makes it so Scratch will do syntax highlighting, which is incredibly helpful. You'll also want to open up a terminal window because we're also going to be compiling and running our application regularly throughout the video. Now Scratch does have a built-in terminal window, but to keep this video simple, we're just going to use an external terminal. Alright, we're all set to start coding. So the first thing you'll write is int main parentheses string square brackets args and a pair of curly braces. And within the curly braces we'll add a few things. At the bottom we'll add a return 0, and at the top we'll add gtk.init parentheses ref args. And then at the bottom again, right above the return value, we'll do gtk.main parentheses. Notice that everything is terminated by a semicolon, and the compiler doesn't care about indentation, but it makes your code a whole hell of a lot easier to read. Now, believe it or not, this is a fully fledged GTK application. We just need to compile it using the Vala compiler. We just type in Vala C space pkg space GTK plus dash 3.0, and then the name of your Vala file. Now, assuming there's no errors in your code, after running the compiler, you'll have an executable, and all you have to do from here is run it. And yes, nothing is supposed to happen when you run it because we didn't tell the application to do anything. In fact, you can't even kill the application without forcing it with Control-C. So you can see that creating an application is relatively easy. It's what goes into it and what the application does that makes it difficult. Alright, let's go back to our code and we'll create a couple new objects so that we can actually see our application. So the first thing we're going to create is called a GTK header bar. All elementary applications use a header bar. In fact, if you look at Scratch, you can see the header bar appear. It's not just a title bar, it is a title bar that allows for embedding of objects and buttons, like the save button, the search feature, drop-down menus, and stuff like that. Now we need something to put the header bar onto. We haven't created a window yet, so let's go ahead and do that. We also have to attach the header to the window, so we'll do that by simply doing window.set underscore title bar parentheses and then the header variable that we declared above. And then finally we need to tell the window to show everything, so we'll do window.show underscore all. And now we'll go back to our terminal, we'll compile our code again, and then we'll run the executable. You can see that now we have a very simple window. It can be resized, it can be minimized, and that top portion there is the header bar. Now if we didn't declare a header bar, there'd still be something called a title bar there, which is slightly different, but they look very similar. So we still had to kill the application by hitting Control-C, so let's add some window decorations and hook up the GTK destroy event. So back in the code, we'll add header.set show close button, and in the parentheses, we'll set it to true. And then in our window section, we'll do window.destroy, and then in the parentheses, we'll do gtk.main underscore quit. Now when we go back, compile, and run our application, we'll see not only a close and maximize decoration, but you can hit the close decoration and the application quits correctly. How about that? So since we're on a roll, let's spice our application up with a little bit more style and a button. So back in our code, let's set the default window size. We'll do window.setDefaultSize, and the parameters will be 350 and 70. Those numbers represent the width and height. Let's also add a border because it's going to look kind of odd without one. We'll do window.borderWidth is equal to 10. And lastly, let's go ahead and add our button. Right above the window.showAll function, we'll do window.add, and in the parentheses, we'll do new GTK button with label, And the label will be Hello Elementary. Back in the terminal, we compile our application, launch the executable, and bam! The window size is a bit different, and now we've got a button. And I think that's going to wrap up part 1 of this tutorial. So at this point, if you've been following along and writing your own app based on this tutorial, I recommend that you just kind of play around with the parameters and variables and see what happens. Like a fun little example is take the hello elementary string that is the button label and put it into its own variable and have the button call the variable. If you've made some mistakes along the way, I'm sure you've noticed that the Vala compiler is actually pretty good at telling you what's wrong, and it usually points you at the exact line in your code that's failing. So if you want to dive a little bit deeper into GTK and Vala, go ahead and watch the next video. I skipped over some of the more fundamental Vala and GTK concepts in this video for sake of brevity, and I cover them more in detail in the next video. And of course, if you like this video and you want to see more like it, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. And yeah, thanks for watching.